Ladies, I'm super excited today. As you can see, we're going to be having a little bit of a discussion on what it looks like to prepare now in the little years of your children for the teen years. And this is something that for me, when I was a young mom the first time, let me rephrase that, mom of young children the first time, I would ask ladies who I saw had good relationships with their teenagers, or ladies who I saw the product of their parenting and I was impressed with, and I would always ask, what did you do when they were little to get this result now? Because the reality is that as we are mothering our children, we're shaping them, we're training them to be the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, the college students that they're going to be. They don't just wake up one morning and randomly produce either character for the better or for the worse. And so I have found in my own journey as a mom, and as you guys know, I kind of get to do it twice because I have our older set of girls and our younger set of boys, that these little years really can make or break the teenage years. And of course, none of us are going to do it perfectly. Of course, there's going to be adjustments that need to be made. Of course, we can't take their little hearts out and cultivate them the exact right way that we want them to be and produce the exact right thing that we want to produce in them. But there are so many biblical principles and wonderful, wonderful wisdom that can certainly help and can certainly help us just parent in a way that is looking forward. So I asked our two mentor moms, Debbie and Robin, if they would join me in just having a discussion of what does that look like to prepare well now for the teenage years. So first of all, thank you both so much for being up here with me. And I apologize in advance. I never call Robin Robin. I call her Phoebes. That's like her family nickname. And that's the only way that I knew her for like the first, I don't know, 8-10 years. Yes. Yes, Phoebes. That's the only way I ever heard her referred. So if I slip up and call her Phoebes, I'm referring to Robin. I apologize in advance. I will do my best. And then, of course, we've got Debbie here as well, which I'm so thrilled about. So just kicking it off right out of the bat, what would you ladies say are 2 to 3 ways that moms with young children can begin preparing now for the teenage years?
Since I'm is this on?
Yes.
It's on? Okay. Since I'm holding the mic, I'll go first. Do we name, we each kind of suggested 3. Do we just do one at a time and then?
No, I'd just give us all 3. Give them all to me right away.
The practical parts?
No,
Or
we'll
just
talk about the
3?
we'll talk about the practical parts
Okay.
afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, the 3 things that I feel that I could contribute to what we felt was most important to do would be to constantly and intentionally refer to the big picture. And by big picture, I mean the gospel, what is in the Bible, a biblical worldview, to have that be their centering point, the point where everything else begins from or starts from. We'll go into more practical ways to do that because I will define big picture a little bit more. The second thing was to develop a dependency on God and an increasing independence from me. And then the third one, I put encourage love, selflessness, and service to others. And I take that as the greatest commandments are to love God and to love others. And so that was our overall part of that big picture.
Thank you. So when I was thinking about the 2 to 3 things, the thing that I was thinking about in my head was that I want to make sure that while they're young, that I'm thinking about and doing things that are going to help me in the end game with the result. So it's not like I can't get bogged down in the everyday. I've got to think longer term. What is it that I want this child to look like when they're fully formed? What are the things that I need to do to help them? So that's where I was coming from as I was thinking of these. So number one, we always wanted them to understand that God is creator. His word is truth, and we're responsible to him. You are, and I am as well. One of my goals as a parent was always to make sure that I was not requiring something of them that I was not doing in my own life. So I did not want to be hypocritical in their eyes. So I wanted to always make sure that I was doing the same as I was asking them. And then you pray without ceasing for them and for us as parents. So those are the three main things that I would say I want to make sure I do.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I would agree with all of those things. Certainly, like establishing the biblical worldview, always coming back to the scriptures. What does the Bible have to say about that? The prayer life, for sure. I'll add two other things. For me, it was firmly establishing expectations and discipline in those early years. That was super important and critical for producing children that were actually enjoyable to be around, not just when they were teenagers, but also when they were young. And then the second thing that I'll add is establishing a solid relationship with mom and dad. But what I mean by that is making sure my kids know that I delight in them, that I enjoy spending time with them, that they're certainly not the center of my world, but they are a top priority in my world, and not only out of obligation or duty, but also out of delight. And I think that as my girls have grown up and I've got to see the fruit of that, just how critical that really is. So now let's get into that practical. So maybe Phoebes, since you have there, I did it. Robin, since you
answer to both?
Yes, thank you. Since you have the mic, why don't you walk us through what did those things? Because those things sound great, right? We can all admit everything that we just said. Oh, that sounds wonderful. But how do you actually take developing a biblical worldview? What does that actually look like for you as a young mom with your children? And so now we'll talk a little bit more about what does this practically look like, and what are some things like tangibly now that you can do to instill these things in your children?
Okay. Michael and I would try to make sure that we guard our family nights. We planned Friday nights as family nights almost every Friday. So don't plan anything else. It's going to be family night unless something terrible interrupted and we just had to put it off. And your family dinners as well, as many as you can get in. I know that we tried to do like 3 or 4 a week where we had that family time, that family dinner. And Michael was always he was a creative soul. He was a musician before he was a pastor. So he always thought creatively. So at the table, it was always interesting. So sometimes it wasn't a prayer that we said beforehand. Sometimes it was a prayer we said at the end. Or maybe it's a song that we sang, or maybe it's a psalm that we repeated together. So there was that spiritual emphasis around the table right from the moment that we sat down. And then hopefully those conversations are also developed around the table. We always reminded them, what are you being a good Elliott right now? So we would say, is that how an Elliott should act? And that's based on all of their input for what does it look like to be an Elliott. And so might be we are kind to one another, or we don't speak rudely to people. Whatever those things were that we all agreed on, we would parent from that. Are you being a good Elliott? And then once they said no, then of course we would go to God's word and say, yes, let's look at this, and what are we supposed to do? So there's reminders of that. And in that, it's helping them to understand that there are consequences for your actions and your attitudes and your words. there are consequences, and some of them, sometimes it's a good consequence, sometimes it's a bad. So all learning is good learning, and in that even if it's negative learning, it can become positive, at least in my experience with my 3 children. So prayer on their behalf in their hearing. So at night, Michael and I would make the rounds. I would start with one, he would go to the other, and we would have a little bit of quiet time where we could talk about the day or what's coming up tomorrow and what are you concerned about, and then let them hear me pray for them specifically. Sometimes those discussions too would, their questions might prompt a discussion that I wasn't necessarily prepared for, so you're crying out a lot for God to give you wisdom of what to say in this moment, because this was not an anticipated conversation. Giving praise as well as correction. I always tried to do that within the day. I did not want to get to the end of the day when they were in bed and say, I never said a nice thing to them. And all I did was correct them or instruct them or whatever. So I always tried to make sure that I was giving praise, not fluffy, finding something really that's praiseworthy about them, which there's tons of things that I could do. And then making sure that when they ask me permission to do something, that my first question to them is, have you already asked your dad about that? So that we don't get played as parents. So Michael and I learned to do that. If they're asking permission, did you ask your mom already? Did you ask your dad already? So that kind of helped with that situation there. And then always just making sure that you're available and knowing that they know that you love to be with them, that you are so pleased to have them as part of your family. So those are some of the things. There's tons of things, and I'm hopeful that around the table you can give each other more ideas to do, but those are some of the things that we tried to do.
I think it's important for us all to kind of give the makeup of our family, of like the ages of our kids and how far apart they are in age and that kind of thing.
Go for it.
For us, we've adopted our children. And so we receive them all. We have open adoptions. We receive them from their birth moms. The youngest was 22 hours old, and then the oldest was 2 days. So right from the beginning. And the girls are 18 months apart, and then our son is 22 months younger than the youngest daughter. When the kids were 3, 5, and 7, we had a 16-year-old join our family. So I got a preview of teenage years, and I'm thinking, oh, I have that to look forward to. So that helped, like a 16-year-old, had her periods and had her moods that went with it. And I didn't know that sweet Cheryl could be, but she could. And so I learned, some things ahead of time before with the younger ones. So anyway, that's what our family looked like. To get an idea of what we wanted to get across to our kids, I'm a teacher by trade, and I am very concerned that all the senses are involved in teaching, because things click better when you see, hear, touch, all those senses together. Learning takes place a little bit better. So we were pretty visual, and I would draw things and we would act things out, and we saw that it clicked with the kids a little bit better. So for the big picture, I would make a diagram. I think it's actually a diagram that is used with Campus Crusade for Christ. There's a throne, a chair, and I would say to them, okay, who gets to sit on that chair in your life? Is it going to be God or is it going to be Satan? The big the big picture is there's a war going on. There's a battle going on and a tug of war. Satan is trying so hard to be worshiped. And we know that God is to be worshiped. But it's every decision and action that we all make, not just our kids, will determine who sits on that throne. Are you letting God sit on that throne, or is Satan ruling your life, being the ruler, the boss of your life? So we had that picture, and we would often say, who's on your chair? Who's on your chair? Then with the tug of war part, knowing that good and evil, we're in a battle, I would actually get a jump rope, and we would act it out several times. I go, we got to get the jump rope out again. And so we would, do the tug of war. Who's going to win? Who is going to win? Who are we going to let win? And so put them in a situation where they have choices and decisions to make of who sits in the chair, who pulls the hardest on the rope, on the jump rope. We would use verbal expressions repeatedly, and this helped. They knew what we meant when we said certain things. We would repeat it often. We would say things like, if we saw that they were doing something well and that they had made a good choice, a good decision, I would say, my husband would say, I think you just made God smile. I think God is smiling right now. And so we still say that. We still say that. We would say things like, stay on the winning team. We know who's going to win. That's the big picture. Mm-hmm. It's a battle, but we know who's going to win. So stay on the winning team. And we would also say, prepare for battle. If we knew a situation was going to be coming up that was going to be difficult for them, it would be for anybody. We've got to prepare for battle and to teach them how to do that. One of the ways that we taught them how to do that was by reading Little Pilgrim's Progress. I love the Big Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, but this was written for the children to understand a little bit easier. Little Pilgrim's Progress. I would have that a part of my library. We would read that every year. We would go through Little Pilgrim's Progress and talk about it's an allegory of a little guy who is going through life physically walking with the goal of getting to the celestial city, which was heaven, and all the different things that he encountered. The characters that he encounters are named very appropriately. For instance, you've got deceit. We know Satan's a liar, and one of the characters is deceit. And how can you be discerning about what a lie is? And also, there was a part in the story that the kids loved. Little Pilgrim was given a rolled up piece of paper to carry, and it was like his instructions, and it kept him safe, and God had protected him by giving him this, and he forgot it, and he left it somewhere, and so he's continuing on his journey, and he was reminded, where's your roll? I don't know. And that was like referring to God's word. We've been given instruction and ammunition of how to fight our battle, and he had forgotten about it. And so just all these kind of, in this book, helped us so much. Really, and then we stress with them that God's love and protection. When we have to discipline, when we disobey the rules are there to protect you because he loves you. You're looking at it going, I can't do that. Well, I can't means in God's economy, please don't. I'm protecting you because I made you. I'm your creator. I know what's going to happen to your heart and your mind if you do this. I say no to protect you, not to be a killjoy. And so for them to understand that the rules are based out of love and protection. For developing a dependency on God and increasing independence from me, giving them choices and consequences and not protecting them from the consequences, which is really hard. We want to step in and say, oh, man, the consequence was you couldn't go somewhere with your friends if, what you did, if you did it. So, and it's hard to see them hurting and suffering and feeling like you don't love them because you've inflicted this consequence on them. Don't give in. Don't give in. And then to develop their own abilities, try not to do anything for them that they could do for themselves. Being a mom, well, I'm supposed to fix this and I'm supposed to do this for them. But if they can do it for themselves, it will eventually give them hey, I did that. I can do that. Mm-hmm. And it accomplishes two things. If they did it with the strength of the Lord, if they prayed about it and you're knowing that as a family you're praying about it and you're not going to help in that area, you're going to see their reliance on God. And if they need encouragement and a little boost, of course you give that. But for the most part, step back and watch and see how God is working in their life and give them some space to have a direct relationship with God. I've often done the visual again of while the kids are young, I and my husband and I are the ones that disseminate information, and through us as parents, we're given that directive as parents to be parents. And so we parent, and so we're holding on tightly to God, and then our other hand is holding our children's hand, and God is speaking through us to our children. And that's a visual to have, but a better visual is thinking ahead. Eventually, my goal is to back up, and back up, and back up until I am connecting their God directly to my child and put their hands together, and I'm out of the picture increasingly as appropriate. Not just all of a sudden, no, not having anything more to do with you. No. It's definitely a process, and seeing if they're ready for it. And but that's the goal. I remember one thing my dad did with me, and we did this with the kids. It wasn't when I was real little, but I was probably 6th grade, and I was invited to go to a movie and a sleepover with girlfriends. And the movie was one that was a little iffy to see. Let's just put it that way. And my parents left that decision to me, if I was going to go to the movie or if I could go after the movie and do the sleepover, which I have concerns about at this point in time now with sleepovers too. Mm-hmm. But at that point, so my dad's instructions to me were, Debbie, we want you to go into your bedroom and we want you to just have a talk with God. Ask him, what does he want you to do? Would he say, oh, that movie is great for your mind and your heart? That would be a good thing that would build into your character. Ask him. Ask him. Also, just find out if these are the girls you're supposed to be with. Or spend more time with them. Ask God and listen and just get that feeling in your heart of right or wrong or what's best for you. Something might be good, but you want the best. So ask God. And I remember the responsibility I felt for myself to ask God and to have that kind of relationship with him. So these kinds of situations, increase our dependence on God when you say, have you prayed about it? What do you think God would say? And if we don't know, then we search the scriptures and we find some general principles, perhaps, that would apply to what you're going through. We had situation ethics games, and I wish I could bring one. I don't know where it was. I've looked. But it was cards, and it was like you could go around. It's just conversation. It wasn't a winner of a game or anything like that. It was just a conversation stimulant. And what would you do in these situations? And then you'd ask. And it was good conversation starters to see. And a lot of it developed their independence in thinking and in preparing them for what's ahead. That maybe they aren't dating yet. So what do you think might happen, or what do you need to be thinking about in this situation? So to prepare them for what's ahead. For encouraging love, selflessness, and service to others. We were a homeschooling family, so they were under my roof 24/7, and we belonged to a school group that had a ministry day every month, a field trip every month, a park day every month. Seemed like there were 4 things, one for each week. But anyway, a lot of involvement with others. And for the ministry days, and for 3 years, our family was in charge of the ministry days. And so I would search around Orange County where the needs were and all. And the kids served everything from serving meals at the city rescue mission to pulling weeds at a nature center, from cleaning an older person's home, just any need out there, we would volunteer and do. Our family also would take in, we did this for our kids because they were adopted, but looking back, I mean, any family could do it and have it be a worthwhile experience for their kids of serving others and thinking about others. But pregnant girls would live with us. I think we had probably about 10 over a few years that lived with us for a variety of lengths of time. The shortest was two nights. She just came from Las Vegas, needed a place to stay while her labor was induced, and she was placing her baby with a already chosen couple. So 2 nights to over a year, where my husband gave her a job at his company, and she needed a fresh start. And so the girls would share a bedroom, but it was a family decision ahead of time. Are we ready to have another girl come? Because you're giving up your space. You know that Mom, me, I'm going to spend a lot of time with her. She's making a decision to single parent or to place her baby for adoption. And those are heavy things. We wanted our kids to see the struggle that a birth mom goes through. So as a family, we did that together, and definitely thinking of what her needs were above our own family, because my family, our kids were giving up a lot by including another person who was needy. We also fostered infants at a separate time from the birth moms. And I would lack sleep during the night because they were infants waiting for all the red tape with their adoptive couple with their parents. And so the parents would come to our home and get their baby, which was wonderful for our kids to see. But they had a part in that because I remember Daniel, our son, just holding a baby and walking the baby up and down the hallway while I prepared dinner. So it was a total involvement in in that. And I can remember him talking to the baby, and it was wonderful because it was things that we had said to our kids, like, do you know how special you are? You know, it was just like, yes, it's been communicated, and now he's saying the same things. I think that's mainly to encourage love, selfishness, and service to others. You know, it starts in the home and modeled by parents. And it's, you know, we had the audacity to think that we could be the model for 24/7 while homeschooling. You know, they're always there. So it did put Dave and I on strong alert. What are our kids seeing? And we needed to keep our relationship strong with the Lord so that we could then pass it on to our kids.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing all that. I'll share a few things too. So I said establishing that source of truth and that biblical worldview. I'd say the main way that we have done that is through excellent books and through keeping church as a top priority in our home. So when I say excellent books, there are so many great biblical books that are appropriate for every single age range of your children. And if you need help or want suggestions, please come talk to me. I literally have like lists on Amazon that I can send you, depending on the age range of your child. But we live in a day and age where we have so many excellent resources at our fingertips. And so books were the primary way that I gave instruction to my children about what does the Bible have to say about that? Who is Jesus? What is the gospel? How should we respond to certain things? What does God expect of us? What should our response to the gospel be? And so really making sure that you're utilizing your resources. But aside from that, it's been our involvement in this church. And before being at Compass Bible Church Tustin, we were at Compass Bible Church Aliso Viejo, and making sure that church is a non-negotiable in our life. We will be here every single Sunday unless we are like dying of illness, unless there's like throwing up going on in our home or fevers going on in our home. We are here every single Sunday. We are committed to the midweek programming. And so whether that's foundations for our young boys right now, which is our midweek program that walks your kids through memorizing the scripture, which is incredible. Again, it's a resource that our church provides, and you just walk through it with your kids at home. To CSM, which is our student ministry, which meets every Wednesday night that our girls have been involved in for 7 years. Church has always been a top priority in our family because God comes first. And that means that if we have to skip a practice for a sporting event, that means if we have to say no to being involved in something because it will long-term affect our church attendance, then we'll say no. Our oldest son has been recruited to play travel ball multiple times, and we have consistently said no because we know that in opening that door to travel ball, it would dominate our lives and obliterate our opportunity to be here at church on Sundays. And so it's something we've said no to. And so just getting with your husband and getting on that same page of, is church going to be negotiable? Is church going to be something that if I feel like it, or if not, or if I'm tired enough, or whatever, that it's going to go off of the calendar? But making church that top priority in our life, aside from our disciplines at home of reading the scriptures, of praying, of reading good books to our kids, that was really, really important. And it's really shaped our children by having like other people pouring into them, teaching them God's word, modeling for them Christian ethics, Christian character is hugely important. So that was, I would say, the two ways that we really established that foundation in their lives. But another thing that I did, and God gave me this idea when my girls were little, is I started playing a game with them called Spot the Lie. And I started doing this with them when they were like 4 and 5. And as you know, if they were watching like a TV show or something like that, and if I heard something, if I heard one of the kids on the television show talk to their parent in like a disrespectful way, or maybe even like say a little bit of a white lie, or excuse some kind of behavior, I would run over, I would pause it, or I would turn it off, and I'd say, someone spot the lie. There was a lie that was just thrown out and it wasn't addressed. What does the Bible have to say about that? And the girls would have to sit and try to figure out, like, what did they just hear or what did they just see? Well, this carried on even to when they were in school. And when they were in school, in elementary school, in middle school, even in high school, when they would come home, I would say, what lies did you spot today? And so they would say things like, oh, my teacher said that the world was created over millions and billions and trillions of years by, all of this came from nothing. Okay, great. What does the Bible have to say about that? Oh, there was a kid in my class talking about how he's lying to his parents about where he's going on a Friday night or whatever. Okay, what does the Bible have to say about that? But that training began when they were really, really little. And it began a lot with that hand holding of me needing to point out the lie for them, me needing to say, like, well, this child just spoke really disrespectfully to his parents. And the Bible says that children are to honor their father and mother. And so, but giving them that biblical lens, that biblical worldview glasses to look out onto everything and filter it through. So the spot the lie game continues to be very, very helpful in our lives and in the lives of my children. Establishing expectations and discipline. I cannot emphasize enough how critically important this is. God's word is, like we've talked about before, is the instruction manual for our lives. And God's word tells us that we are to discipline our children out of love. We are to give them rules. They are to follow God's rules first and foremost. And when those rules are not followed, a painful consequence is to be administered for the purpose of restraining sinful behavior in the future. That's the whole purpose of discipline. It's not to get out your own anger. It's not to vent your own frustration. It is to give a painful reminder so that in the future, the thought of that pain that they had for a moment will restrain their bad behavior in the future. And so we had rules and expectations and continue to have rules and expectations of how we want our children to behave, what is and is not acceptable. For a few years in our family, it was literally like a list that we had printed out and framed. And we kept it really short and simple, like really big buckets that you could kind of throw everything into. So it was things like we will be kind to one another. There is no whining or grumbling allowed. We expect obedience all the way, right away, with a happy heart and a good attitude. Things of that nature. And so much of their behaviors would just come back to those big buckets that we would say, oh, you missed the mark on the expectation for our family. Again, this is stuff that you've got to sit down with your husband and work out. What are the rules and expectations of our home? And then also talk about what are the consequences when that's broken. And is there like a tiered process of, oh, that was broken the first time. It's a reminder. Do not do that again. Do not cross this line again. Otherwise, there will be a discipline or a consequence. Is the second tier a timeout? Is the third tier, something being removed? Is the fourth tier, okay, now you're actually getting a SWAT because you need that little sting of pain to remind you that this is not acceptable. What are the tiers? But having a firm game plan ahead of time so that when you're in the moment, you're not guessing, what do I do? Oh man, this kid just really talked back to me. Or, oh, this kid is now screaming no in the middle of the Target aisle and I don't know what to do. Well, if you talk about the scenarios ahead of time with your husband, then you know what to do. Then you have a game plan. You guys have agreed upon it. This is how we're going to handle behaviors, expectations, all of those things. So sitting down and talking that out, I think, is super important. And then for the delight, for allowing our children to see and know that they're not only a duty, but also a delight, is spending time with them in things that are important to them. So I will admit, I do love baseball. I love baseball now on a whole nother level because my boys love baseball. I've never minded sitting down and watching an Angels baseball game. But now our home is filled with not only Angels baseball, but all MLB and banana ball. And I've got my sons asking me to come outside and pitch to them. So guess who's out in the front yard pitching badly, might I add. But I do it because I want my boys to see that I delight in them, to see that, you know what, you are worth me taking 15, 20 minutes out of my meal prep time or out of like tidying up the house to come and interact with you and to play baseball with you, or to even just sit beside you on the couch. Sometimes my little guy just wants me to come sit next to him on the couch and watch a baseball game, or to watch, you know, the Savannah Banana game or whatever. And so really making sure that you find those opportunities to say yes. One of the greatest pieces of wisdom that I was given as a young mom, older mom told me, we have to say no to our kids so often, especially in the little years. More often than not, when they're like elementary age and younger, it's just, no, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. Find every opportunity that you can to say yes. And so if you see that you have 15, 20 minutes in your day that you can give up, say yes to sitting with them. Say yes to getting outside and playing with them. Say yes to pulling out a floor puzzle and doing it alongside them. Say yes to playing sorry with them at the dining room table. I'm just thinking of things that I've said yes to, like in the last few weeks. Find the opportunities where you can say yes. And then utilize that yes as those moments to delight in them, to enjoy them in these little years, because it really does. It goes by really, really fast. The saying is true. The days are long, but the years are really short. And you suddenly look back and you're like, I can't believe elementary school is done. I can't believe their time not in school is done. You know, they've started pre-K now, and now the rest of the time that they're in my home, they're going to be in school. All of these seasons are actually very short-lived, so make the most of it. I cannot believe that we are already out of time. I was telling the ladies earlier that this is such a very big topic, and I think next year we'll put it on the calendar to maybe parse this out a little bit more and do like 2 or 3 sessions of what this looks like to parent towards the teenage years, and then actually what it looks like to parent teenagers as well. So I hope we've given you enough. I know that was a little bit like drinking out of a fire hydrant, but even if there was 1 or 2 nuggets of wisdom that you can tuck away in your pocket, 1 or 2 elements that you can begin implementing now, will be really great and profitable for you and your kids as you look towards the teen years, which are really fun. They can be super enjoyable, really fun. It's been some of my favorite years of parenting for sure. So with that, I'm going to turn you to your table discussions, and let's thank our mentor moms for participating.